Welcome into Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily TCU podcast. I'm Steven Simcox, your host, and we have a special guest today, Brian Howell. You can catch Brian's work at buffzone.com, where you can find a lot of good Colorado content leading up to Friday's matchup between TCU and the Buffaloes. Brian, first of all, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. And let's just jump right in. So both these teams, I was saying the other day, there might be 5 quarterbacks playing in this game, possibly. Sonny Dykes said that
Right.
that 3 QBs could play for TCU or expects them to play. I know Colorado has a battle going on between Brennan Lewis and JT Shroud. How do you think that shakes out? Are they going to rotate series, and kind of what do those guys bring, each of them, to the football field?
Yeah, to answer the first part, I don't know how they're going to do it. In fact, Carl Durrell was asked the other day whether it's going to go off of script, gut feeling, or how the game goes, and his answer was all of the above. So I think they've probably got a script, but it could be that whoever starts, if CU's up 14-0 after the first quarter, and your plan was to go with the other guy in the second quarter, maybe you just keep going with the first guy. If it's a couple of 3 and outs, you go to the other guy quicker. So I think we are going to see both guys, unless whoever starts is just killing it, and then there may not be a need to. I don't know who's going to take the first snap. My guess would be it's going to be Brendan Lewis, based on the fact that he's the incumbent. And Carl Durrell said the other day that there hasn't been enough done to unseat him, from not being the starter. So I would imagine he gets the first snap. So that's just a guess. They are different. Fans down there might have seen Brendan Lewis play in high school. He's from Melissa, Texas, and a dual threat. He was a pass first kind of a pass first dual threat in high school, but threw for a ton of yards, ran for a ton of yards. He's definitely the more dual threat CU has, and he can burn teams with his legs. He had a couple of nice touchdown runs last year, key ones in a couple of their wins, but struggled throwing the ball. But he's more of a runner than a passer, but he can throw it. JT is that pocket passer. He's got NFL type of arm. I mean, he makes throws that you watch sometimes, you're like, wow, I've seen that on Sundays before. So and he can move, but he's not Peyton Manning back there, but he's certainly not Michael Vick back there either. So they are different in that regard.
And so the offense, you have a new OC in Mike Sanford, who has an extensive resume, but most recently at Minnesota. I saw, Brian, you put in a preview that they wanted to be multiple on offense. So what do you think that means? What kind of different philosophies, formations do you feel like we'll see on Friday night?
Yeah, I'm very curious, because Sanford is funny because he's a really nice guy. I like him, but he is very paranoid about information getting out. I mean, this is a guy that told us, Minnesota played CU last year. They play him this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
But he was telling us that staff studied CU's spring game that was on TV extensively, and it was very vanilla that spring game, but they studied it extensively. So he's paranoid about information getting out because he knows what coaches can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
He just flat won't give up a whole lot. But I do think that they very much want to establish the run. I think that's a big point of emphasis for this offense, and they want to throw it. I mean, Sanford was a quarterback. Durrell was a wide receiver in their playing days, so they want to throw the ball. But first and foremost, they want to establish a run. I think we're going to see everything from some 4 wide sets, some 2 or 3 tight end sets, 2 back sets, empty sets. I think we're going to see a little bit of everything.
And from a stats perspective, I mean, Colorado was really anemic on offense last year.
Yeah.
I guess whether it's a returner or a newcomer, did they have like a dynamic playmaker that they want to get the ball in his hands, and somebody who can, make some big plays for them? Are they expecting that this season?
I think so, but there's a lot of guys that need to prove it. I mean, their most explosive player last year was Brendan Rice, who is now at USC. So, that's an issue for them. But a lot of last year's struggles were offensive line. That group was not coached very well, and they really struggled. They didn't know what to do half the time, and they feel much more comfortable under their new coach right now. I think that makes everybody else feel comfortable. But they do have some guys that I think are going to be some playmakers, and Daniel Arias is one that he's a 5th-year senior. He's taking advantage of that COVID year. We've been waiting for him to put it together throughout his entire career. When you see him, he is absolutely an NFL body. He's
Okay.
6'4", 210 receiver. He's one of the fastest guys on the team, but he's never really put it all together. He had a career high 19 catches last year, which is not a lot. So he's got 28 catches in his career in 4 years. But he's a guy that, has first round NFL first round ability, but he's just got to put it together. And he could be a guy that they really target. RJ Snead is a guy that TCU fans know about because he's played against him quite a bit in the last several years. So he's one of the top playmakers. Montana Lamonius Craig is another receiver that only 10 career catches at this point. He's a sophomore, but I expect him to have a really big year. And then Alex Fontenot is another Texas product. He's from down in the Dallas area. That he's going to be the lead running back, and I think that he has some ability to have 1,000-yard type of season if he's healthy.
So
And then real quick, sorry, one other guy, Brady Russell, the tight end, is I think he's going to be one of their best weapons and a guy that they utilize quite a bit.
Was he their leader in like receiving yards last year?
He was in receptions and receiving yards, and their numbers were terrible, so it looks like about 2 games worth for most teams. Right. But yeah, he was their leader.
So turning over to the defense, I mean, they held up Brian pretty well. I guess the games that they won, it was led by that defense being able to get stops and force turnovers. That D line is something that stands out to me. It seems like they got a lot of experience there. Is that the biggest strength of this unit?
The D line and the linebackers for sure. That front seven, there's a lot of experience there, and there's not very much in the back. But the D line definitely, Jalen Sami, Naeem Rodman, Terrence Lang are guys that have been around for a long time now. Guy Thomas is a 6-year senior. That's he used to be at Nebraska, then JUCO, and now he's here. So they got a lot of guys in that front four that I think are going to be very experienced. And then their 3 linebackers in the middle are going to be very good. I mean, Robert Barnes, who formerly at Oklahoma. So these are guys that TCU fans have probably seen. Robert Barnes played against TCU. Josh Chandler Samito has been at West Virginia the last few years. He's now the middle linebacker here. And then Quinn Perry is a guy that's been here. He was one of their leading tacklers last year. So those 3 guys, that's 3 seniors that have got a lot of games and a lot of tackles under their belt. So I think it's going to be huge for CU if that front 7 can play well, because that secondary is so inexperienced.
And speaking of the secondary, man, it's really funny, Brian. These teams have a lot of similarities. You were talking about the playmakers for Colorado earlier, and TCU's kind of in the same boat. They have probably 5 or 6 wide receivers that they think are going to be breakout players, but they haven't really done it to this point in their careers. Yeah. But I would say they think that's a strength. So this secondary for Colorado, I know they're experienced. Does the coaching staff feel though that they have some talent there that these guys can compete?
They do. They love the talent here. 3 of their starting DBs from last year are now playing elsewhere. One of them at TCU.
Right.
So both their corners are playing at other schools in the Pac-12 right now. So their experienced veteran cornerbacks right now are Nico Reed and Kalen Moore, who are true sophomores, who played about 130, 140 snaps each last year. That's their veterans, because behind them is a bunch of true freshmen. So they're extremely young, but they're very good. I've had even some of the former players that are no longer with CU. I had a preview come out about the corners this summer, and a couple of them, messaged me out of the blue and said, those guys are really good. You're going to like how good they are. So they love that group. They just haven't done it yet, and they've got to prove that they can do it. Trevor Woods is another one, a safety down in the Texas area. There's a lot of Texas guys on this team. He's a true sophomore as well. Tyron Taylor is kind of that nickelback. He's a true sophomore. So really 4 of kind of the 5 DBs that would be in starting roles are true sophomores. And, that's very young.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Mark Perry, who's now at TCU and was at Colorado previously. I guess, Brian, does the coaching staff have any concern? I don't know if you got to ask him that this week, but do they have any concern about him knowing defensive calls and signals? Are they changing some of that up with TCU coming to town?
Yeah, I don't think they're concerned with it. It wasn't really brought up.
Okay.
But I think that there's so much change that happens a lot of times that they'll mix some of those things up. And I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there's there's a guy on the staff that used to be at TCU as well. So there's some familiarity on
Okay.
both sides. I'm sorry, I don't know the name off the top of my head. He's one of the support staff guys, but so there's a little bit of familiarity on both sides, but I don't think they're too worried about it. I think they're probably going to mix things up a little bit.
Before we get to predictions, kind of a big picture question. So this off season has been tumultuous for the Pac-12 with USC and UCLA leaving, and I guess Colorado's in a pretty unique spot because they're previously a Big 12 school. Now they're in the Pac-12. What's your sense of kind of what administration thinks, what fans are thinking about the future of the league in the Pac-12, and would they welcome, potentially a Big 12 invite moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because it changes every day, right? And I think
Yeah.
the message I get from administration is they believe in the Pac-12 and that the Pac-12 can stay together, but that's not really in their hands. I mean, so much of that is determined by when does the Big Ten. It's not if it's almost like when does the Big Ten call up Oregon and Washington and say, all right, let's go, come with us, because once that happens, the rest of the Pac-12 is probably going to dissolve at some point. As far as the fans, I mean, you have some of the older set that kind of misses the K-State games and some of those things like that, and obviously some of the marquee matchups from the Big 12 and Big 8 days won't be there anymore because
Right.
Nebraska, Texas, Oklahoma are gone, or will be gone. So I don't think there's a ton of nostalgia, but I think right now the fans just get us in a spot that's going to be the best, that's going to help us make the most money and be somewhat relevant. I mean, at this point, we kind of know CU is not going to be in one of the big two, the Big Ten or SEC, but just don't get left behind.
Right.
Stay somewhat relevant. And if that's staying in the Pac-12, great. If it's a move to the Big 12, great.
Okay, Brian, do you have a feel for Friday night? Do you have a prediction? Two teams, new staffs. What do you think about the winner on Friday?
Yeah, it's going to sound like a homer pick, and I admit it that you're probably the same way. I don't know if you'll admit it or not, but when you cover one team, it's hard not to drink some of the Kool-Aid, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
and get a little bias for that team that you're covering because it's the only team you're around. So CU is not going to be a great team this year. They're not. I don't see them as a bowl team. I think that they're going to struggle to get to 6 wins, but I think they're better than people think. And frankly, I think they win on Friday night. I think they're a 14-point underdog, which I think I don't see where that number comes from, but I think this team has traditionally really geared up for night games at Folsom Field, and you got a Friday night on ESPN. The student section is going to be rocking. I mean, Folsom's kind of a rocking place for a night game, and I think they're going to be geared up for it. And just some of the changes that nobody knows what CU is going to do. I think they come up with some surprises, and now they win this game. But I think it'll be a good game.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. You mentioned the Kool-Aid, like TCU fans. There's gonna be some weeping and gnashing of teeth if they lose. The way they've been talking this week about just what they think they're gonna do to Colorado. So, yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Brian, thank you so much. We'll be back with Locked On Horned Frogs after this.